Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave
and Mecky.
Broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 310.
10 and 300.
It's on air, online, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop radio. If you missed it, Solaris's show, let me remember,
was on.
It was on, and it was on before our show, and she had Jeff Woolmine on, and they were talking about UFOs, South Mountain, petroglyphs in the sky book. He's an author. That's so awesome. She has great guests, great show. Good on you, Solaris. And if you missed her show, you know what? It only cost $5.95 a month to access the archives at the station. If you access the archives, you get access to all of the hosts' shows, which makes it a really good idea. Then you can download them. They're MP3s. Download them. You can listen to them when you want. I like that too. So, why don't you do that? Do it for me. Do it for Mecky. Do it for Solaris. Do it for all the other hosts. But do it for the station. So that there we can continue. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Darkingung, where I am, and Mecky.
The Daruk people.
Yes. And we pay respects to elders past, present, and future. And let us remember that beneath our houses, the concrete, the roads, and buildings are lands which have had stories passed down for 240,000 generations. Just let that sink in for a second. Mecky.
That's my name.
Yes, it sure is. How's that puking? How are you, buddy? You good?
Yeah, I can't complain, so I'm not going to. Interestingly, who's going to listen, right?
That's right.
Interestingly, though, we are yet again the laughing stock of the political world, right? We are. So guys,
in our little backwater.
No, I think it's a global laughing stock, to be honest. So in our little backwater here in Australia, the Deputy Prime Minister had an affair with his chief of staff, whatever, she worked for him.
A staffer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now she is expecting his child. He himself is married, has 4 daughters. Now, so far, well, who cares, right? Now, the problem is this. He's the head of the National Party. In Australia, that means he's fairly conservative. And the National Party, the platform of the National Party, is family values. so that's a problem, okay? But having said that, his party is still behind him. So, okay. I mean, nobody's perfect. He made a mistake. Yeah, is he an okay politician? Well, as far as they go, I guess he's all right. But now the Prime Minister chimed in and said, no, there's now a new code of conduct. We can no longer have carnal relations with anyone that works. Worded. Right? And with anyone that works for you as a minister, or a member of cabinet. You can't be done. Okay, good.
But he also said, they're allowed.
That's what the backbench is for. Couldn't stay away from that one. But having said that, he also said that there was poor judgment, and all that stuff on the part of Barnaby Joyce. And look, true enough. But his party is still behind him. So the way it works is right. In coalition with the Liberals. So Malcolm Turnbull, the leader of the Liberals, is the Prime Minister, and Barnaby Joyce, who's the leader of the Nationals, is the Deputy Prime Minister, the Vice Prime Minister, if you want to say it that way. Anyway, but it's determined by the party. The party determines. In Australia, you don't vote for the person; you vote for the party. party. So it's very easy to get rid of political leaders and prime ministers. Very easy. There's no vote necessary. It's just the caucus of the party that does it. The party is behind him. The party
for the Liberals and the National, so the LNP and the Liberal Party, they only have to have an internal vote for themselves. However, the Labour Party, they've actually got a vote of their members, not just the front bench, to vote in a new leader. So all of the paid members of the Labour Party have to submit a vote, and that person, whoever wins that. So they can't just knock over their leader whenever they want anymore. And that hasn't been adopted by the Liberals or the Nationals.
No, clearly. Mm-hmm. Now, but what that means is that Malcolm Turnbull should not really comment on the situation as it is, because it's another party's problem. If the party is still behind their leader, then that's what it is. To make comments.
Oh, I like that point too. Yes.
Well, to make comments in public about your alliance, it's a coalition, right? That are detrimental to the leader of your coalition partner. That's not a good thing. It doesn't work. But that's where we are. And yet again, of course, the opposition, the Labour Party in this case, is calling for everybody to be sacked, to go home, and for Labour to take over. So,
of course they will.
Of course they will.
Yeah. But Mackie, this comes at a really odd time. So, I've heard political speak before. We're behind the leader. That means the opposite. It means we're all get our knives out and we're ready to stab him in the back. Right? I've got full faith in the leader. That's the other one. That means they don't have any faith at all. Right? You've seen Yes, Minister. It's all true.
Oh, yes.
Now you're right, Mackie. You pointed out something really interesting, and that is because there's there's two parties together, both leaders. The biggest party is the leader, and the second one is the deputy. The leader of the second party is the deputy. However, this is the same fellow that made international news about wanting to euthanize Johnny Depp's dogs, Pistol and Boo. Do you remember that, everyone?
I do remember that.
It was world news. That's the guy who's at the very... Actually, to be honest, Mackie, when you timeline it, that can't have been very far apart.
Mm-hmm.
His international fame from wanting to kill Johnny Depp's dogs to this... the union of a married man and a single woman, copulating, that can't have been very far apart. Now, whatever it was, if you've seen a photo of this man, I'm sure that he wouldn't make the front page of a magazine that ladies might want to look at attractive men. Right? He's not a poster boy for attractive people. He's not.
Hey. People have different tastes, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, certainly there's one person at two. Let it be on the record that two people have been interested in him in that way. But that's it. Right? I think the rest of the Liberal National Party, if the Nationals, if they decide to keep him on board, I think they might be a little envious. Have you seen the rest of them? Right?
How come he got some, man?
Yeah, well, maybe if we can be leader, we can get some too.
I get some, yeah.
Do you know, they already had a policy that said you're not supposed to have relations with people that work in your department.
Yes, of course.
Not the work directly for you business. And then you've got actually, this is the whole thing where it starts to get a bit weird. If you pluck a word out of the sentences when you, in the media, when either the leader of the party or Barnum Joyce, Malcolm Turnbull, have been interviewed about the topic, or even the other people with media releases that didn't make the headline news but were read out during the day, you can actually hear quotes that suggest that Malcolm Turnbull and his office were completely aware of the employment of someone. This is the secondary issue. An employment of someone that you're in a relationship with is actually forbidden as well.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
because then you're basically getting money and allowances, and you've given them a pay rise, and you've authorized it, and you shouldn't be able to do that for someone that you're in a relationship with. So that needs to be a third party that comes in to mediate that and give approval. There are processes, and you know, it's government, so there's tons of red tape and bureaucracy around the ability to do that. Now that's appreciated. However, an admission from the leader says that he knew about it, and then suddenly he didn't know about it because it started getting out of control, and then he would have been liable, and you know, and been caught up in this whole thing. So he distanced himself as much as possible. This is what Australian politics is come to. Okay? Now, their only reason they're in power is because they formed a coalition.
That's right.
If it was a four-party system here, with independents, 5, because you've got the Greens as well, then there wouldn't, the margin would be so small there wouldn't be a majority. And you know what? That sounds like a council of people, a table full of the heads representing the state. I think we should just abolish, you know, federal parties then. Yeah, it should just be a representative at the table arguing, stuff the lead. Who needs the whole lead? Yeah, maybe that just trims off some of the stuff we don't need. I hear a lot of talk about people wanting to make it just a state-based thing. Get rid of the feds. We can just agree on that level, and that would still make it federal. Yeah? But anyway, there's a long way past this to be through about 1,000 other elections before we're going to get to anything that seems randomly fair to the end user. In fact, the distance is getting worse between the fair system and an autocracy. It's crazy how fast we've driven into, well, you know what, we're all so stupid we can't make up our minds. Hey, Quimby, you tell us. You tell us how we're doing. You just dictate to us. We're voting for dictators now. That's what we're all doing. And they're all really worried about this populist president kind of thing. Oh, the Trump is such an onion in the ointment, to quote Grandpa Simpson, because look what it's going to do to politics. Look how afraid these anointed, born and bred and, you know, tapped on the shoulder people are, who have gone to the right schools and done the right things, worked themselves up through, you know, the public service.
Well, let's just work here in the loosest meaning of the word. Okay? In the most generous definition.
And so I think they're all quaking in their boots. I really do. The next election, I think, will be maybe a powerful distinction between the public servant and an autocratic, you know, possibly insane populist leader. I don't know. That's what I think. If any party can just make sense of that and stand on a platform of just rules. Okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. We stand by what we say. Vote for us, and this is the path we'll take. But wow, just this week, Meki, they published the military spending. I don't know what was in that filing cabinet, but boy, wasn't it powerful. So they said 32.7 billion is being spent on just contracts for the military.
Well, fortunately, that only translates really to one toilet, so that's okay.
Did you know there was $300,000 worth of it was $100,000 worth of bagpipes, and and there was $300,000 worth. I know, it's crazy, right? $300,000, and Meki's just fallen off his chair. $300,000 worth of horned flutes.
Okay, guys, this is what we have to do. We're going to weaponize those bagpipes, and we're going to weaponize the horned flute. It's a horned flute. If it's got a horn, we can stab someone. You over there, Point Dexter, weaponize it right now.
Poison tipped.
Maximum coverage and spread, and spare no expense. Need more money? Yeah, here's it. Blank check. Weaponize this thing. Right? Come on, let's do it.
So, if no one understands, because we're like the little USA, so everything that America does, we'd like to tag along the back and say, look, we're doing it too, and we raise our debt ceiling just like you now, because we never used to really do that, and now we have so much debt that we can't ever pay it back either, with our tiny economy. But you know what, Mickey, our current debt, the total debt, is equal to those military contracts in 1 year.
I know. Now let's be clear though. No, you brought it up. So if we like Venezuela did, Venezuela. If we nationalized our resources industry, just the resources industry,
just the resources.
Boom. Second measure that would help. Let's tax the banks. Hey,
wow.
That's a good idea. I like that. There's actually a piece of news that came out recently as well. We the corporations here in Australia, they don't like to pay tax, so they don't. It's like some corporations and banks haven't paid tax for years.
They're like Neo from the Matrix, Mickey. They've learned how to dodge and weave.
That's done. And how? Neo? Amateur. He doesn't know it's not ducking and weaving. But look, this is the reality. You're saying we can't pay back our debt. With what bank exactly? We wouldn't be in any debt. To be honest, and to be very frank, if we actually managed our country properly, if we managed it properly and everybody benefited both from our enormous resource wealth. I mean, from a resources, think about it. Our country is the size of the continental United States. That's same size. Mm-hmm. You've got 300 million people, and we've got 25 million people, roughly, let's say, right? Same size, in fact, bigger than Western Europe and Southern Europe together. Again, population 400 million versus 20 million. So, but we have all the mineral wealth, if not more, than most of you. So we are one of the world's largest, I think, if not the largest copper producer, iron ore, uranium, gold, diamonds, rare earth, minerals. It's all here. There's coal. It's all here, even gas and oil. Not massive oil reserves, but certainly very significant gas reserves.
Bauxite, Mickey, aluminium.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And my point here is, and I want to give you a very simple example, and then I'll let it go. When I say the economy is being mismanaged, so we have something that we export. It's export gas. It's like we export gas into southern or Southeast Asia and China. So it's a whole bunch of like so many million cubic tons of gas there, and they're getting that gas at a very good rate. So we negotiated a trade agreement, and they're getting gas at a very good rate. That's good. Everybody wins, you think, right? The funny thing is this: consumers in Australia pay more for gas than a consumer in, say, Singapore or downtown Shanghai would pay. Not only that, if there's now a shortage of gas supplies in Australia,
because we're selling it all to everybody else.
Because we're selling it to everybody else. So not only are we paying more, we are also suffering from the shortages that are entailed in shipping everything overseas. So that's what I call mismanagement, right? So it's a simple example. There's a dozen more and more than that, scores in fact. But look, we could be in really good shape. There shouldn't be any debt. This is really the original point, Dave. Australia should not be in debt. We shouldn't. It just shouldn't happen. But it's completely mismanaged because there are too many interest groups. People are in fact, the only interest they have is to line their own pockets. Truly, the politicians, and of course corporations, that's what you expect, but the politicians are certainly enabling that kind of behavior. And what bank that you, and I'll talk to American and European listeners here, or maybe even from Asia if we have listeners there, go and check how much profit your biggest banks are posting every year. The biggest banks that First National, whatever, in the States maybe, or maybe HSBC over in Hong Kong. See how much profit they make. So our banks here, the big three banks, they post between $3 and $5 billion worth of profit every year. $3 to $5 billion on a population base of 25 million.
Guess what, Mackie? Commonwealth Bank posted a record $8.7 billion for the year.
0.7 billion.
Yep.
Okay, now let's assume that we take this Commonwealth Bank and transplant it and the way it works into America and scaling it up accordingly. Now that means okay, because there's let's call it, we've got 25 million and you've got 250. You've got a few more, but it's a factor of 10.
Yeah.
So they posted a profit of 8 billion here. That means they will post a profit of 80 billion in the States. If you look at it from a ratios point of view. Okay, just profit. Not talking about turnover or revenue. No. I'm talking about operating income, top line profit, the money you put in your bank account and pay your executives horrendously large bonuses with. That's the money I'm talking about.
Well,
so
Mackie, I've got some comparisons here. Leeton Bank, if you know who that is.
I do.
291 million profit, net profit after tax.
Well, that's
it's you know what?
Less.
It is
It's a lot
so
less.
crazy that you can't even fathom how they're making the money from the small population base.
We're being charged. So if we use an ATM in
Robbed.
automatic teller machine, right? So if you're using an ATM that is not your banks or affiliated with your bank, you have to pay a $2 charge. God knows for what. Credit card interest rates, as well as credit card default, late fees, missed payment fees, general admin fees, whatever they all are, right? Are amounting to enormous amounts of money. They're massive amounts of money. If you query it as a consumer, and most people don't know that, the banks usually back down because they can't actually justify what they're charging. Now, I got no problem with someone covering their costs. That's cool. I dig it. It's everybody's got to live. But once you start gouging, and this is what they're doing, look, what can I say? I mean, the Commonwealth Bank now isn't in court with 10,000 charges of money laundering.
That's right.
So clearly a very ethical institution. Look, I think that's enough hate on the big banks, but
when we finish this show, our accounts will be closed and
that's it.
Everything.
But Dave, who know what?
What? So look, just saying that it is it's certainly a thing where the banks are making quite a lot of money, despite what they're in court for at the moment. And we know that the exchange rate profiteering was being manually manipulated by most of the banks across the planet because of all of the court cases that have come and gone, where no one except for a single individual was ever named. And they're expendable, so it doesn't matter. The bank didn't know anything about it, clearly, but all the people trading all that money clearly did. So, but look, this is that's the tip of the iceberg.
Bingo.
That's what it is. And it's probably going to continue.
That's exactly right. Yes.
What can you do?
No, not probably. It will definitely continue. And the reason it will continue is because, nobody's doing anything about it. I mean, the people that could, they're bought off already. So that's not going to happen. And everybody else is making too much money.
Making too much money. Be nice not to have to make that kind of money.
No, that's it. I mean, look, it's a battle that cannot be won. I mean, you can fight against the machine. You can. The French workers threw their wooden shoes into the machines, and the wooden shoe was called a sabot. Right? And since hence we got the term sabotage. They threw the wooden shoe into the machine to break it. Not that it worked too well, like steel cogs and wooden shoes, I guess who wins. But the point is that you can't try to fight the machine. There's some parts of the machine where you have no chance. I mean, none, zero. And the banks and the money they make, that's one of those areas. If you do try and earn, become a problem, trust me, you won't be very long. It's not going to be a problem for the banks. Just you'll be taken. I've seen in the past. I think about all the presidents that tried to change the banking laws, right? Or to try to move away from a Federal Reserve in the States. Look at this. We're talking about presidents of the United States here. Yeah, that didn't go well.
They don't last long when they start.
Become monetized either. No, they don't. No, that's right. But it's not going to be monetized. Actually, we can't monetize it all anymore, can we?
No, because they won't let us monetize anything any longer. Look, we put the call out. We put the call out to get more subscribers onto our YouTube channel, which just houses our archives, and you can chat to us there as well, and ask questions. If you do that, we need to only get 1,000 subscribers. So please go to Shiny Side Out on YouTube and subscribe to lift that up. Mackie, I just wanted to quickly just say that, you know how I've been pointing out that the US is deploying troops everywhere? Well, it's continuing to do so, and they've just put another 1,000 troops to Poland. And this is surrounding Russia. It's opposed, this troop movements are opposed by Russia, but it's formally or formalized by NATO as this anti-Russian force. I mean, what do you think, listener? Do you think this is a good idea? I mean, in this time right now where we tend to publicly trust everybody, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So, look, again, we are now living through what's going to be known in the future as the perpetual war, the long war out of future. It's what Orwell spoke of, and he saw the future fairly clearly. Maybe he knew something we didn't, but it was always heading that way, right? The wars that we have, well, pretty much, actually maybe since the beginning of time, the wars have really only ever benefited a few. And usually the money people. And in fact, there's a famous story that Rothschild was backing both the French in the late 18th century, and benefited from both. It doesn't really matter who wins. Is the point, because money is being spent on weapons, on ammunition, on supplies, rebuilding. In fact, I mean, the biggest business is rebuilding, especially today. If you think about what kind of firepower we have and how we can level entire cities without much trouble. So it's big business. Somebody always profits, and the people that profit the most are the money people, the banks.
And you
also
might
weapons
find,
makers.
Yeah, the weapons makers make the weapons and then get the rebuilding contract. Mackie, the thing that I noticed the other day was that Russia had said that they're going to rebuild Syria. They've actually offered already to begin the rebuilding process. However, something very interesting that I noticed in a news story, and that was from this week, 5 days ago though, it says US airstrike destroys Russian-made tank used by pro-Syrian forces. But this is in Syria. A US airstrike in Syria destroyed a Russian tank. Wait a minute. So, I just want to say that Russia's already declaring that they're going to rebuild. America stood back because they weren't invited into the Syrian conflict by the government. Right? The American government seems to be fighting the Syrian government, where the Russians are fighting the rebels. But the rebels are being armed, apparently, by the US. Because the US are trying to use the rebels to bring down the government. That means the Syrian government and the Russian government are actually on side to stop the rebels. Hang on, that just smells like proxy war to me, Mackie.
Look, that's the exact right word, proxy war. So maybe we've seen them since. I mean, the Korean conflict, the Vietnam War, sort of fought out along the Iron Curtain. Cuba, even the conflicts in Africa in the 70s and 60s. They were all proxy wars, every last one of them. This is just a continuation. And it doesn't really matter what the ideology is. No longer a communist nation, and it's not as capitalist, maybe more so than the United States. China certainly communist. All that means is they've got a very strong planning structure, and they're actually doing really well. But still, they're using a lot of capitalism to drive that growth. So if we have to now that the isms are complete, what matters are the power blocks, and the power blocks, are shifting and moving, but it's still largely the United States, Russia, or the Russian Federation, China now, and a few others. In my opinion, will never be make it into the top echelon of powers. There's too much internal strife. And Brazil, well, maybe unlikely. Africa certainly is. Europe is still a strong player, but completely divided within itself. So it really is down to Russia, China, and the United States, in my opinion. Right? These are really still the power players. And certainly China is very much on the rise. And you're right, Dave. These are all proxy wars. Will we see more of it? Yeah, of course we'll see more of it. It's just the way the international, the global scene actually works. This is what the Germans like to call realpolitik, real politics. Not diplomatic small talk.
It's not the talk. It's
or
the
politicians' lies, but what actually? Yeah, it's the actual thing. It's exactly actually in reality. How the world is run and divided. But again, it's just a show. Don't forget that. All of this stuff that we worry about every day, all of these things, they're just a puppet show. Because the actual people in charge, and I call them people very loosely, are orchestrating it all. It's an orchestration to distract us, to make us worry about things that are completely irrelevant, to find comfort in reality TV shows. And things like that, right? Because and give us, near food, so we can fill our bellies without any actual sustenance. But look, and this is really what we want to share with you as well. But Dave, there's this one other interesting piece of news that you posted me as well. This was around surprise discovery recently before we launch into the show. I'd like to have a quick chat about that. The Andromeda, was it Andromeda?
Yeah, so Andromeda is the galaxy that is in the midst of colliding with our galaxy. It's going to take another 4 billion years or something as crazy as a length of time. But, in real terms, that's not very long in space-time. So 4 billion years, yeah, it's all good. There's millions and billions of planets that will have come into existence and disappeared by then, and it doesn't really matter. However, these two galaxies are colliding with each other, and it's in slow motion. We see it only like a single photograph, but it's certainly doing that. And but the mass, Meki, talk about the mass of the Andromeda Galaxy. Remember, it was originally thought to be quite small in comparison to the Milky Way, our galaxy.
Yep. But in fact, it is actually 2 or 3 times bigger than we had thought, which is interesting. Really interesting, because you think that we looking at it, we'd be better at estimating, but it's clear that it's in fact 2 to 3 times bigger than we had initially thought. What that means in the collisions. Look, it's interesting. It is interesting, but the point really of the story is that we're learning new things every day, every single day. things that we thought we knew. This new discovery of the show as well. We want to remind you that new discoveries are coming every day, and a lot of these discoveries we hear and other show hosts are saying about the nature of reality. You know, the things that really matter, the nature of humanity, right? It's being pushed back further and further. So we are not at the end of knowledge, right? Our heads are not full yet. But it is really important to break it, because I know a lot of people think, all the experts say we know it all. No, we do not. We do not know. In fact, entrusting our education to the public, right, the public sector, is probably one of the worst things. I mean, think about it this way: Elon Musk launched a rocket, private company, put his Tesla car into space. We now have private people. About the parachute from space, right? So these private concerns have now more vibrant space programs than some nation states. So can we allow these governments to educate our children, or should we seek alternative methods to do that? And this is just one of those things. The latest knowledge is not given to our children. In fact, in some instances, I believe that our children are being made stupid on purpose. And I'll give you an example. Before, again. So the story highlights that we do not know everything, and the story also highlights, I think, to me at least, that the cutting edge of knowledge is not something our children are privy to. Yeah, this is not something that school 10, 12, 30 will become a cog in the machine. Okay, you can now be a useful citizen, you can work, you can read, you can write, you can do basic math, you can pay your taxes, you can hold a 9-to-5 job. That's really what that's meant to do. The actual thinking, if you're lucky enough, might happen later in life. Maybe you find a really amazing job, that gives you, that stimulates you and that makes you think. Other people might be, fortunate enough to go to university or college, and maybe they have some really great teachers there. But very few of us are ever afforded the luxury thinking about things. Really thinking about things. Sitting down and just thinking about the nature of reality, right? Being really philosophical, and then maybe trying to practical considerations. Very few of us. Our school system is certainly not designed that way. So anyway, I took the discovery of the size difference that we perceived in the underlying efficiencies. But again, it's these shows, or shows like this, that hopefully can teach you a little bit of the gap. Are we out there? Yes, we are. Executive dinner, and I told people the show, and a few of them have now listened to it. They go, "Oh, conspiracy." I said, "Well, it's part of the thing." So, "Oh, who killed JFK?" Sure. But then they said, "Well, what do you really believe?" So I started talking about the hypothesis. Well, didn't expect that. And it was interesting. So it's the moon in 1969.
Sorry about that. Becky's audio is getting increasingly worse. I don't know why. I'm just going to bring him back in again and see what happens.
Hello?
Yep, Becky, are you back
Hello?
again? Yep, it
How did
sounds
you
like
lose me?
you are. Your audio is getting so terrible. Yeah, you're back.
Wow, sorry about that. Really? Is it okay now?
Well, it's a little better, but we'll just have to see how we go. It went perfect.
Wow.
And
Yeah, I'm not. Go on.
Yeah, see, audio is gargling.
I'm not getting NBN until. Oh, okay. I'm not getting NBN until 2020. Yeah, sorry. Let's look. I don't know how much of all that this shows light and hopefully can bridge a gap in our collective education with the things that we weren't exposed to in school. Because that's all we want to do here. Like, you give people information, you can draw your own conclusions, for the hypothesis, which we're doing for the last time. Well, not for the last time, but the last time today is together, I think. It is now 45 pages of notes around the hypothesis, which I'm actually going to put into coherent text and give this magazine to publish. So hopefully they will take that and publish it. So it's available in a public medium as well. It's not yet on our website. So if you listen to the last 6-7 shows, it's all there. But sorry, did you want to say something else about the Andromeda Galaxy?
No, I'm good. Let's move on.
Okay. Well, let's do it. Okay, so last time the pineal gland and how to activate.
Oh, I've got it. I've got a Candace connection. Hang on one second, everyone. Hang on. Okay, I've just dropped the link. Let's re-establish it again.
How's this?
That's much better.
It is? Okay, let's see. Let me know when it goes sideways again.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry. We spoke about the pineal gland. We spoke about its importance in ancient cultures and how much focus it had, oddly enough. I mean, it's an odd thing, right? The Eye of Ra, which is really just a cross-section of the pineal gland, the hypothalamus. Again, a bit odd, but there it is. Then we spoke about the general, I guess, the use of the gland, what it does. It governs your circadian cycles, your sleep rhythms, and so forth. It's also referred to as the third eye by ancient cultures. And more so than we spoke about the detoxification, because oddly enough, the pineal gland accumulates fluoride and calcifies at an unprecedented rate in your body. It's also not part of the blood-brain barrier, so it's the second most supplied organ in the body after the kidneys. The pineal gland is the second most blood supplied organ in the body. So a very important organ or structure within your body. It's also unique. There's only one of them. And then so we spoke about the detoxification, and then we spoke about the activation of the pineal gland, because if you can detox it, so what, big deal. You also have to then activate it, and there are a lot of, we shared with you there's some very simple techniques, and if you missed last week's show, just Google pineal gland activation. There'll be a whole bunch of things that come up, and there's meditation, there's breathing exercises, so there's nothing out of this world that you have to do. Having said that, so on a related matter, I'm just finishing reading a book about telomere activation. Mm-hmm. There's actually it's now a TA61, I think it's called.
TA65.
65, that's it. Bingo. TA65, thank you. That apparently reverses the telomere shortening. But we'll get some more updates for you for some other shows. But so look, here we are. What does it all mean, right? So we gave you the final thought. So the final thought that we had probably in show number 200, it was this. And this is the final thought that we had at the end of that show cycle. The ultimate escape is only possible through complete understanding and cultivation of the pineal gland. That is the great work of the Buddhas and other enlightened or holy figures. Now, of course, we're not the first to realize this, not by a long shot. Mm-hmm. This knowledge is thousands of years old, maybe tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. And it's being continuously suppressed, at least in modern times, as far as we can tell, and in occasion even with deadly force. And the closer we get to the truth, the more frightened they become. Now, we have discussed at length, and I'm not going to go into any detail right now. Now, this is that truth, right? The final truth that we came to at the end of show number 200 was, ultimately, we are all capable of escaping this prison, all of us. Okay, that's the truth that we shared with you then. Now, that's how far we got last time. But there's more. There's more. The next part addresses the why we are here. Why are we here? What? I mean, okay, so let's just assume that, okay, we're here. It's a prison. We shouldn't be here, and we can escape. That's wonderful. But why are we here? And that's when I had the epiphany. But in order to understand the why, we need to talk about a couple of abstract concepts and seemingly unrelated things, or at least as far as the hypothesis is concerned. So bear with us, but we do need to talk about them for the epiphany to become clear. Dave?
So quantum decoherence. Quantum decoherence is the loss of quantum coherence. In quantum mechanics, particles such as electrons behave like waves and are described by a wave function. These waves can interfere, leading to the peculiar behavior of quantum particles. As long as there exists a definite phase relation between different states, the system is said to be coherent. This coherence is a fundamental property of quantum mechanics and is necessary for the function of quantum computers going forward. However, when a quantum system is not perfectly isolated, but in contact with its surroundings, the coherence decays with time, a process called quantum decoherence. As a result of this process, the quantum behavior is lost. Decoherence was first introduced in 1970 by German physicist H. Dieterse and has been a subject of active research since the 1980s. Mekki.
Decoherence can be viewed as the loss of information from a system into the environment. It's often modeled as a heat bath, since every system is loosely coupled with the energetic state of its surroundings, right? That don't have any isolated systems is really the point. Viewed in isolation, the system's dynamics are non-unitary, although the combined system plus environment evolves in a unitary fashion. Thus, the dynamics of the system alone are irreversible. As with any coupling, entanglements are generated between the system and the environment. These have the effect of sharing quantum information with or transferring it to the surroundings. Decoherence has been used to understand the collapse of wave function in quantum mechanics. Decoherence does not generate actual wave function collapse. Okay, so decoherence doesn't actually generate that. It's just a mechanism to understand what happens. It only provides an explanation for the observation of wave function collapse, as the quantum nature of the system leaks into the environment. That is, components of the wave function are decoupled from a coherent system and acquire phases from their immediate surroundings. A total superposition of the global or universal wave function still exists and remains coherent at the global level, but its ultimate fate remains an interpretational issue. Specifically, decoherence does not attempt to explain the measurement problem. Rather, decoherence provides an explanation for the transition of the system to a mixture of states that seem to correspond to those states observers perceive. Moreover, our observation tells us that this mixture looks like a proper quantum ensemble. In a measurement situation, as we observe that measurements lead to the realization of precisely one state in the ensemble. Decoherence represents a challenge for the practical realization of quantum computers, since such machines are expected to rely heavily on the undisturbed evolution of quantum coherences. Simply put, they require that coherent states be preserved and that decoherence is managed in order to actually perform quantum computation. Now, let me just quickly simplify that. In our experiments, and I'm going to pick on the double slit experiment here, you see a wave function, right? If there's no observer present, if we don't measure the outcome, you see an interference pattern. right? That is called the global function or the global level, right? Everything happens in. That's the superposition, yeah? As soon as you observe it, it all collapses into one. That's the observable, I guess, the decoherent state into the one state, okay? As soon as you measure it. What scientists are saying today is that, yeah, that's all right. Now, but it doesn't mean the other outcomes or the other points on that wave, if you will, disappear. We simply can no longer measure them, okay? So if you don't observe it, you get the wave function. Okay, that's the superposition. You observe it, you get a single outcome. That single outcome is the decoherence. Okay, that's the end result of the decoherence, the single outcome. But the other possibilities on the wave function, according to scientists or the latest, thinking that we have today, they do not disappear. They simply become immeasurable, meaning that the one observable outcome that we call the reality that we're in is now isolated from the rest, and we can't bridge that gap. Think of it as pages in a book, the multiverse theory. You're on your page, and that's wonderful, right? If you were in a higher position of dimensionality, you could look at the entire book, all its pages. But if you're on the page, all you know is the page. You can't see the other pages. You can assume they're there, but you don't know. Now, what the double slit experiment told us is that these pages probably exist. They are there. But as soon as we observe them, we can only see our page. So if we don't look, there you are. But as soon as it's like the fridge light. If you close the fridge, is the light on? I don't know. Probably not. Dave.
Interpretation.
Oh, sorry.
There, we're going to have to go to the break. So the break's going to come up in a second. Yeah, just so much. I so do appreciate the double slit experiment for everything that it tells us. And you can't just look at it and say, well, it doesn't apply to me. I just go to the shops, work at home, get my little triangle. I don't care. What do I care?
Yeah, someone else's problem.
Someone else's problem. That's right. However, that's the nature of the place you're at. Do you want to just carry on like you're a sim in Sim City? Or do you want to know that there's some place other than there, that you're made of electrons, that you're in the computer, that you're doing your task, but that's not everything that's going on around you? I think the double slit experiment changed the planet. And it's taken so long for it to become public information. Because they were just scratching their heads going, what? What?
Well,
what now?
It is a lack of on the physics teachers. Oh, okay. Don't go away. There's more. We're going to talk about the Epiphany, and donate if you can.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Gives you access to all of the archives that Hawk has accumulated over the years. For us, it's close to 7 years. Now we're finishing out our 6th year on the air. 310 shows.
Yep.
310 shows. 310. That's 310 Sundays. Yeah, that's a lot longer than I thought it would be. But look, prior to the break, we had a bit of audio trouble, I apologize. I'm hoping to get NBN in 2020 because this is Australia and that's how long we have to wait. Anyway, we were talking about quantum decoherence. So I'm going to quickly take this and then I'll give Dave the observer effect. So we talked about quantum decoherence and what it really means. What it really means is that out of all the possible outcomes on a wave function, on the superposition, if you will, we only experience one. We only experience one, which is called the collapsed wave function, our reality, the decoherence, if you will. Okay, now decoherence does not claim to provide a mechanism for the actual wave function collapse. Rather, it puts forth a reasonable mechanism for the appearance of wave function collapse. The quantum nature of the system is simply leaked into the environment so that a total superposition of the wave function still exists. But, as I said earlier, it exists, at least for all practical purposes, beyond the realm of measurement, so we can no longer observe it. Okay, the wave function is there, but as far as we are concerned, okay, it has collapsed into just the one outcome, the one pinpoint, our reality. Of course, by definition, the claim that emerged but unmeasurable wave function still exists cannot be proven experimentally. Decoherence explains why a quantum system begins to obey classical probability rules after interacting with its environment, due to the suppression of the interference terms when applying Born's probability rules of the system. So it explains why a quantum system begins to obey classical rules. The question is, why? Why does it collapse when it's observed? That is the mystery. That's the mystery. Why does the observation cause the superposition to collapse into the one observable outcome? Dave.
Where are we?
Observer effect, my friend.
Oh, thank you, because I just thought you might have mentioned most of that in there. The observer effect in physics is termed as the observer effect, which refers to the changes that the act of observation will make on a phenomenon being observed. This is often the result of instruments that, by necessity, alter the state of what they measure in some manner. A commonplace example is checking the pressure in an automobile tyre. This is difficult to do without letting out some of the air, thus changing the pressure. Furthermore, it is not possible to see any object without light hitting the object and causing it to reflect light. While this may seem negligible, the object still experiences a change. Think about that. This is everything I learned in physics, Mickey, but I'll tell you. This effect can be observed in many domains of physics and can often be reduced to insignificance by using better instruments or observation techniques. In quantum mechanics, however, there is a common misconception that it is the mind of the conscious observer that causes the observer effect in quantum processes. It is rooted in a misunderstanding of the quantum wave function and the quantum measurement process. Now,
so this is where I disagree completely, but go ahead.
Yeah, I disagree completely with that statement as well. So really, what is the difference then between the observer effect and the uncertainty principle, Meki?
Yes, thank you. In particle physics, the observer effect in general use refers to any effect caused by the act of observation. When Heisenberg came up with the uncertainty principle, although the mathematics of the theory was accurate, his reasoning behind it was not. Heisenberg's idea was, the position and velocity, or momentum, of a particle cannot be measured accurately at the same time, because the very act of measurement of position causes a change in the particle's momentum, because of the interaction between the measuring photon, or any detecting particle for that matter, and the particle itself. But it was later found that the uncertainty was in fact not a result of measurement, but an inherent property of the universe. For example, when you take the wave nature of a particle, if the position is well defined, the wavelength, the momentum isn't. And if you can measure the wavelength accurately, the position isn't well defined. So with regards to the general use of the term, there's no real connection between the uncertainty principle and the observer effect, the former being a law of the universe irrespective of measurement. In physics, the term observer effect is more famously used to describe the collapse of a wave function upon the act of measurement, which is a true account of quantum behavior. For example, you can say the act of measurement has localized the position of the particle. So just to recap on everything that we've just said, if we measure, and I'm going to talk about the double slit experiment in a second here. If we measure the path of the electron as it goes through the slits, if we measure that, we will have a outcome, a single outcome. Okay. If we do not measure it, so if we're not looking where the particle is going, and when I say looking, of course, not, we're not actually looking at it, we're just having a measuring device, then it behaves as a wave. So it is no longer a defined particle, but it behaves in a probabilistic way. So it becomes a force of probabilities. Okay. So instead of having the one certain outcome, it is now an outcome of probabilities. That's what the wave function describes. And if you don't observe it, all outcomes are equally probable. And that's why you get the wave function displayed on the screen, which is really just like a hazy thing, rather than discrete impact points. So to say that the measurement process and the conscious measurement process are relevant is disingenuous, because measurement is only possible through consciousness. We're getting into very deep philosophical debates here, but what else could possibly perform the function of measuring if not a conscious mind? And the thing is this: if you measure it and you don't look at it, right? And experiments have been done to that effect as well, then it's a wave function. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you're not ever looking at the measurement. So it remains a wave function. It's only when it's consciously observed, the measurement, by a conscious mind, consciously observed by a conscious mind, not a mechanistic phenomenon, does the superposition, the wave function, actually collapse. So I don't care what people say. I don't care how kooky it all is, but that's the reality, and that's why a lot of the quantum physicists are turning to philosophy and religion, because it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, and that's where my epiphany came in. It doesn't make any sense. Why should me looking at something change the nature of reality? Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a change or a calcification of our reality. So in the superposition, everything is possible, right? The electron goes through one slit, it goes through the other slit, it goes through neither slit, it interferes with itself, right? It bumps into itself in a million different ways. But as soon as I measure it, it does none of that. It does none of that. It collapses into the one thing that then actually happens.
It becomes the thing you expect it to be.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
It's the thing you want it to be. So how can that even be possible, Mekki? And that's the $1 million question. It is. But let's spend a little bit of time. This article is really great by Avery Thompson in 2016. Dave, I know you love it, so please do take it. And I have a slide deck going at the moment, so if you're watching this on YouTube, there is an in-depth version of these. You'll find them on the internet, but I certainly do cover it off. So do you remember the double slit experiment, everybody? It's one of the weirder experiments in modern physics and cuts to the heart of the weirdness of quantum mechanics. And remember, quantum mechanics is the world we live in. I just want to remind everybody, it's not just the experiment that happens in a lab. It is the actual place we live. Basically, waves that pass through two narrow parallel slits will form an interference pattern on a screen behind it. This is true for all waves, whether they're light waves, water waves, or sound waves. We know what waves look like. But it isn't just a wave. It's also a particle called a photon. That's light. So, what happens if you shoot a single photon at the double slits? It turns out though there's only one photon, it still forms an interference pattern, which this is what instantly fried everyone's brain. As if the photon travels through both slits simultaneously and interferes with itself. But hang on, it's a single photon. But wait, it gets even weirder. And there's a new episode of Space Time on PBS that shows the observation of the double slit experiment and the behavior of the photons, so you can have a look into that. There's YouTubes of it as well. The idea behind the double slit experiment is that even if the photons are sent through the slits one at a time, there's still a wave present to produce the interference pattern. The wave is a wave of probability. I mean, you can prove this mathematically, because the experiment is set up so that the scientists don't know which of the two slits any individual photon will pass through. But if they try to figure out by setting up detectors in front of the slit to determine which slit the photon really goes through, the interference patterns don't show up at all. This is true even if they try setting up the detectors behind the slits. No matter what the scientists do, if they try anything to observe the photons, the interference pattern fails to emerge. It even gets weirder than that. A group of scientists tried a variation on the double slit experiment called the delayed choice experiment. And this, you might know this one if you know about the top hats experiment. A scientist placed a special crystal in each slit. The crystal splits any incoming photons into a pair of identical photons. One photon from this pair should go on to create the standard interference pattern, while the other travels to a detector. Perhaps, they thought, with this setup, physicists might successfully find a way to observe the logic-defying behavior of photons. But still it doesn't work. And here's the really weird part. It doesn't work regardless of when that detection happens. Even if the second photon is detected after the first photon hits the screen, it still ruins the interference pattern. This means that observing a photon can change events that have already happened. It affects the past. Scientists are still unsure how exactly the whole thing works. It's one of the greatest mysteries of quantum mechanics. Perhaps someday someone, maybe one of you, will finally be able to solve it.
See, and this is the crux of it, right? It does matter very much whether or not you're measuring it. And of course, the only thing that matters here is that a human being, a sentient conscious being looks at the observed phenomenon. Okay, looks at the observed data. If no one looks, then interference pattern, boom, easy, right? Superposition, it's all good. Global wave function. As soon as somebody looks, it collapses. Even if it's already happened, right? This is the real mind bender. No, okay, so the statement earlier, the official statement that we misunderstand the effect here, and that in fact a conscious mind is not necessary, I completely disagree with. A conscious mind is absolutely necessary for this to happen. In fact, let's quickly talk about quantum superposition, and then I'll get to the epiphany. Quantum superposition is a fundamental principle of quantum mechanics. It states that much like waves in classical physics, any two or more quantum states can be added together, superposed. And the result will be another valid quantum state. And conversely, that every quantum state can be represented as a sum of two or more other distinct states. Mathematically, it refers to a property of solutions to the Schrödinger equation. Since the Schrödinger equation is linear, any linear combination of solutions will also be a solution. An example of a physically observable manifestation of superposition is the interference peaks, or are the interference peaks from an electron wave in a double slit experiment, which we just discussed. Okay, so superposition is all is the entirety of the observable phenomena, of all probable states that the particle can be in once it hits the screen. That's the superposition. Okay, that's the complete wave function. Okay, so here's the epiphany. So we've talked a little bit about quantum mechanics here. This reality, this is the epiphany, is dependent on the number of people actively believing in it. We are here to ensure the continued existence of this reality. To put it simply, I propose that we, sentient beings, are here in order to ensure there is quantum decoherence. We are here to stabilize, or maybe even create, this reality. And there's some interesting things I want to leave you with. Okay, so again, let me say this very clearly. We are here for this reality to exist. We are necessary for this reality to decohere to exactly the way it is right now. And I want to be very clear. That is why most of us, from a very early age, are indoctrinated to think certain ways. Okay, that is why our biology is the way it is. Right, eyes forward. Okay, very limited biologically speaking. Our prison, which is our body, right, is a very limiting factor. Our true selves are completely disabled in this particular reality matrix. Okay, the one chance that we have through the pineal gland is actively being blocked. Right? I mean, we've spoken about fluoride in the water, completely unnecessary. Doesn't do anything for you. Right? It's good for my teeth. No, it's not. Fluoride is not a topical treatment. The fluoride in our water is primarily designed for the calcification of the pineal gland. That's what it is. Okay, so everything in this world is designed to limit our thinking, to limit our choices, to limit our understanding of the true nature of reality. When we dream, not every dream, but when we dream, certain dreams, that's when we get a chance to get out and have a look at the real world. Okay, when we dream, and especially lucid dreamers will be able to give credence to that. But in a dream, everything makes sense because all of a sudden our faculties are enhanced to where they should be. As soon as you come back to your physical body, if you will, right? As soon as you come back to this physical prison that we find ourselves in, you're limited immediately, right? When you leave it, and I mean, leaving in a metaphysical sense, and you access the higher dimensions of existence. Again, it's an inelegant way of describing reality. Words are very inelegant to describe what I'm trying to convey to you. Telepathy would be perfect, but the fundamental thing is that we can only access the higher realities when we sleep and dream, or when we imbibe certain drugs. Now that's the dangerous path, and I don't recommend it to anyone unless you know what you're doing. That's a path that can lead to massive destruction. Okay. So it is the mind, our mind, that is necessary for this reality to exist. So if we took all sentient beings out of this particular reality, would this reality collapse? Yes, I think it would. I think it would simply cease to exist. Okay, I think it is absolutely necessary that we are here thinking it into existence every second of our lives. It helps if we all have the same view of what reality should be. The funny thing is this: we don't all have the same view. Okay, and this is an addition to the epiphany here. I'm just going to go a little bit further, and then I'm going to share a couple of phrases with you. We are seeing certain things manifest themselves for some people and not for others. And I think that's because some people's realities are slightly different to other people's realities. Okay, so when people say, "Oh, I see UFOs all the time," or maybe I see ghosts, or I'm a victim of a poltergeist phenomenon, or I saw the monster of Loch Ness, or whatever, I believe that some people simply cannot experience that reality. They simply can never ever see that because their minds just were conditioned in a different way, and they're completely locked to some of these experiences, right? Cultural upbringing is very important too, and the spoken language is a massive divider of our cultural understanding of reality. There's a layer of reality, and I'm talking about, okay, so from a very simple point of view, we all look forward and we all fall down if we stumble in the dark. That's a layer of reality that we all share for the most part, yeah? But there are other layers of reality, right, which aren't as important to the existence of this reality as others, right? I'm sorry, it's getting complicated. But the belief in ghosts, the belief in unidentified flying objects, or even visiting, other beings from outer space, none of that threatens the existence of this reality. So they can coexist. That's okay. But they're completely opposite to each other. Even the belief in God, an atheist. It's okay that you can believe whatever you want. It doesn't really matter, because none of us really have critical mass to change. The framework of this reality is all within. But no matter what you do in this world, no matter how crazy you think, you are still working within the parameters of the box. You're still within the panopticon. That's the point I'm trying to make here. The only out, right? Again, during a dream state, so even drug-induced sometimes. Again, not recommending it. You can, and some of the really advanced souls, let's call them, right? Some of the Buddhas, some of the holy people, the ascets, and essentially the people that really went to great pains to meditate and come to a better state within themselves, have managed to escape, I believe. Some of them have chosen to come back here and help us, right? This is really part of the mystery school teachings as well, right? But essentially, we are all within that box, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how controversial you are, because you're still limited by your biology. You're still limited by the body you're in. You're still limited by needing to breathing oxygen. We have to breathe oxygen. Really? Right? I mean, I go back to the movie The Matrix. And, Neo goes on, it all feels so real. And the guy that, ultimately betrays Neo and his friends also goes, look, I know this steak isn't real, but God, it's good. Right? Put me back in the Matrix. I want to be a movie star. So even if you told someone there is no spoon, the internalization of that realization may never be forthcoming. I could tell you there is no spoon, and you can hear me, and you can even tell yourself you believe me. But you don't really believe me, because for you that spoon is still there. And that's the way for most of us. We have bought completely into this reality. And we were, in fact, coerced maybe, but certainly, we're being brainwashed from a very early age to be indoctrinated in this reality. Have you noticed that children of human beings specifically take a very long time to grow up and become familiar with their environment, right? It's like nothing that you would see in the animal world. Once a creature is born, for the most part, it's out there, fully functional. I can go off and I'm going to run around, right? I'm born, I'm running. It's different from marsupials, and in fact, the higher you move up the food chain, the less independent the creatures are. When I say food chain, I'm talking about from a cranial perspective. But human beings are the worst. Human beings are by far the worst when it comes to surviving in infancy. Our infants are completely useless, right? Like they can't do anything for themselves. They have zero survival potential by themselves. Interesting, if you think about it. Whereas other infants in nature are completely different. Right? If you see a gazelle being born, it stumbles around for a few moments, but then it's off and running. Yep. Yeah, sheep. I mean, if you're in Australia, you've got sheep farms. If you've got a chance, go and have a look. That little sheep, lamb, is operational pretty quickly. Okay. Of course, they're learning and such, but human beings, or the children of human beings, take extraordinarily long time to become functional in this reality. I think that's a direct result of our non-belonging into this particular plane. Okay, and we're being pulled through the cycle of rebirth, which is really part of this, right? So, because we're here, and you think when you die you go somewhere, you're not going anywhere. Okay, you're not going anywhere. Sure, there might be stages for what. I mean, if you believe in something, you probably pass through certain stages before you're reincarnated again. But believe it or not, it's the likelihood that you're being born again into this reality is very, very high. The evidence is almost incontrovertible. I mean, there are thousands, literally thousands of cases of reincarnation that have been documented. Now, the problem, of course, is you can't prove any of this empirically. So our scientific method falls flat because it's looking at phenomena that are fundamentally not in the same category as cutting open a frog and looking at its heart and organs and such, right? So these are phenomena that are completely beyond the reach of our scientific methods today. We need new scientific methods to study them. And we have to take into consideration, intuition is very important, very, very important. Intuition, anecdotal evidence, right? We have to start considering the spiritual component of these things. I know these are all of this goes against hard science, but hard science can only take us so far. And it has taken us so far. It really has, right? In a science book, physics, chemistry, that's going to be written today, okay? And then there's going to be a war, let's say, in 1,000 years, they're going to write another science book on physics and chemistry. It'll have the same content. Okay? Hydrogen, oxygen, H2O, that's water. That will be the same in 1,000 years, but that's just the mechanics of this reality. It's just the mechanics. It is not the actual nature of the framework. So we understand the mechanics of it. We understand some of the framework, but not all of it. It's great. So you understand the mechanics. Big deal. Right? We don't understand any of the underlying reasons. Why are we here? What does it all mean? These are the questions that are fundamentally of importance. And we have answered none of them. Okay, we've tried to answer them with religion, philosophy, certainly. Science has given up. Science says, no, it's all just random. It's just a big coincidence we're here. Yeah, Big Bang and a few particles colliding and heavy metals born in the heart of a star and boom, here we are. That's science's answer. Science says nothing means anything. That's really what science is saying. Nothing means anything. It's just big coincidence. There are no moral imperatives. How can there be if it means nothing? There's no prime mover. There's no God. There's nothing. Right? So nothing is of significance. That's what science is telling us. Now, clearly not the case. We all feel it in our bones. In our bones, we know, and I don't care what your upbringing is, unless there's some chemical malfunction in your brain, and you know what's right and what's wrong. We know we don't like to be hurt. From that, we can extrapolate that probably other people don't like to be hurt either. Okay? So there are certain things innate within us, and it doesn't matter what culture you're from at all. Okay? We all carry very, very, very similar views on certain things. They will change and shift, and some things will be shocking to others, sure. But fundamentally, what it means to be human, right, is a fairly narrow concept for us, right? There's interpretation, there's room to move, but it's a fairly narrow concept. And that's interesting in itself. So here we are, right? Here we are at the crossroads, needing to make a decision. What are we going to do? We are here essentially to make sure this reality continues to exist. We are here to cause quantum decoherence. Yeah, I know it's a big statement. I know that, and I'm not making it lightly. But after looking at everything, and I mean pretty much everything, I have no other choice. I have to say that we sentient beings are here in order to ensure quantum decoherence. Now, Dave, the question is, why? Why are we here? I mean, who benefits from us being here. I want to say two things, then I hand it to my esteemed colleague. There are two phrases which are being used a lot. I want you to hear them and then think about them in the context of what we have just shared with you. One is ordo ab chaos, which means order out of chaos. And the other one is e pluribus unum, out of many one. So both of those phrases, if you look at superposition in quantum mechanics, make perfect sense. Order out of chaos. So chaos clearly would be referring to the wave function, to the global wave function, right? All of it, like it's all there, it's just interference pattern, it's all over the shop. So order, which is the order then, is the collapse of into just the one reality, right? Quantum decoherence. And out of many one, same thing, slightly different meaning. Again, out of many one, it is the one that is the quantum decoherence, right? Out of the wave function, which is many. The probability function is just collapsing into one. So these are in fact on your dollar bill. Yeah, pluribus unum and order ab chaos. They are on your seal as well in the United States, the Great Seal. This is the teaching of the mystery schools. This is the message that they're sending us through the ages, through tens of thousands of years. I don't know how long. This is what's important. Understand this. Understand order out of chaos. Maybe we chose to do this. Maybe we chose to be part of the quantum decoherence, to create a stable space. This space, I don't know. But there has to be a reason we're here, right? To ensure this reality exists. And in fact, one more thing, we call it space-time, right? Space-time, completely wrong way around. It's time-space, we should call it. Not space-time, because the only thing that matters within this perceived reality is time. So it is time-space. Space does not exist without time. That's a big statement as well. Yes. Now, what is space? The way we perceive space is through motion. If there's no motion, there is no time, there is no space. Okay? Time is a direct function of that motion through space. Okay? If everything stopped, froze in its place right now, there would be no time. Can't be. Everything is frozen. There's no motion. There's no space. And we know there is no space. Right? Therefore, there can be no time. Again, another big statement. How can you say there's no space? Well, how do you explain quantum entanglement? Right? Spooky action at the distance, if you will, right? You have got one particle over here, you do something to its spin, for example, the exact same thing happens to its entangled counterpart, no matter how far away. No matter how far away. It's instantaneous. It's not a microsecond or a nanosecond or a femtosecond. No, it's instantaneous. That means there is no intervening space that you need to travel through. Or there is a higher space which does not play by motion or time rules, which is really the same. In the higher space, motion and time are non-concepts. Have to be, in order for quantum entanglement to work. Right? What do you think, Dave?
Oh, I like how you threw it to me right at that point. You covered off so much, and I want to take it back a bit, and I'll get back to entanglement in a minute. So, my take on this, and I'm agreeing with Meki, but I'm adding something to this.
Beautiful.
So, when I discovered the Planck length and the double slit experiment, I realized my epiphany was that the entire universe is quantized digitally, is not analog, and that then it could be likened to a computer game. So in the description of the collapse of the wave function or decoherence in quantum physics, if you put the reasoning behind that, not the action, but the reasoning behind it, and look at a computer game, you get this. In a computer game, we only render for the viewpoint those things that are in frame or in the frame of reference. For instance, like that of what needs to be rendered. It only needs to be rendered because we're looking at it. In a game, the viewpoint is rendered and nothing else. The rest of the scene that you aren't looking at are just numbers. They're pure numbers. They're in the CPU in the game that are unimportant. And they remain numbers until someone looks at them.
That's it.
Think about how that matches what we've just been talking about. You cannot render a pixel to a point that isn't in a grid. A pixel on the screen is only at X and Y. It's not at half X, 3/4 Y. It's at XY. It's at a point. Now, in this universe, we've measured that to the Planck length. And that's the minimum an object can move and then stop into a new position. Now, this distance between where it was before and where it is now is the minimum distance that you can do anything. And this distance between the points is called the Planck length. That means the universe is digital. Far out. I mean, honestly, if I threw a ball and it came to rest, it will come to rest on one of those Planck length points. It's quantized. If I threw it into space and it finally came to rest of its own accord, 1 trillion years from now, it will come to rest at not 1/2 Planck length, but 1 Planck length. Exactly. There isn't a 1.5, it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. The number, that's it. It's a whole number. We're talking about whole numbers. They're very small, granted, but they're still a thing. Now, entanglement. The most puzzling thing that's ever been known outside of the double slit experiment. So the double slit experiment perplexes everybody who looks at it and no one can work it out. And I love that about it. But also, entanglement is perplexing not because two things become synchronized. That's easy, we can do that. That's fine. However, the two things that become synchronized in a way that we can't detect. We have no clue how they're synchronized and how they communicate to each other. That was the point you were making, Mackie.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Esteemed co-host. And it is this unknown communication between the two particles, who aren't intelligent particles. These can be photons or electrons. And they don't have a way of being able to communicate with each other. We've just synchronized them so they behave as one, both exactly the same. I rotate one quarter turn to the left, the other one does the same thing. And we can tell this by polarizing light. For instance, you wear those sunnies that stop the glare, right? The photons that are coming from the sun, or any other light source for that matter, are being created in pairs or clumps or clusters. And every single photon that goes and becomes polarized through your sunglasses is also affecting the polarization or orientation of its pair, whether or not it's going into your sunglasses or somebody else's. Hang on. And that even is, now we've proven this in experiments, it's also valid whether it's happened in the past or it's about to happen in the future, somewhere else. Its pair will also be polarized. Now, because it takes 3 million years or whatever it is that they've estimated that light will eject itself from the sun, its pair that it paired up with when it was created or through the dynamic processes in the sun may not come to you. That same photon might be ejected in a different direction and go off somewhere else in the universe. But it too will also be polarized. Now, the experiments suggest also that it doesn't matter whether you're doing it after it's been detected. The other pair will still be polarized. Or you only polarize it before the other one has gone the same distance. You polarize it beforehand. And the best example of this entanglement is using, say, a set length of fiber optics, like they did this in Europe on the telephone network. They downed it for some maintenance, and they used the largest, longest stretch of fiber optics in the world and decided to perform this experiment. So they had audio, like the audio coming through your stereo system between components. If you've got one that uses optical fiber, good for you, but think about how this works. And so they have the optical fiber sending an audio signal down the fiber, goes into a prism and splits off into two different directions. Yeah, it's a one-way trip, two different directions, and they polarize light at one of those ends 20 miles away, and the one at the other end of the other 20 miles going in a different direction becomes polarized. This is part of the experiment. But what they did is they shortened the distance one of those legs had to be. Yeah? And they polarized it at the furthest point away, which means the pair had been made polarized, or not, sent through the system, and had already ejected before they polarized its pair. And when they did that, they'd found that they'd effectively polarized the one that had already left. It had already finished in the system. It had become polarized back in time. This is this connection Meki's talking about. This, it doesn't, and I'm bringing it back to you, it doesn't have time and space as a factor in this layer of communication. Why is it that we do? Is it the thing that science fiction talks about, subspace, where sending a message through subspace is instantaneous across the entire universe? Is that how these things are communicating? We've tried to detect how they communicate, in radio silent booths, in the thing that tests in America the mobile phone emissions. It's completely radio silent. It's a Faraday cage, and yet they can still do it. They can do it through, a foot of lead. Doesn't make any sense to our brains, but guess what? They can still do it, and they're still doing it today. As old as the double slit experiment is, it's still perplexing. Quantum entanglement, still perplexing. Now, unless you start to think about it in the way that all of these great minds are thinking about it, well, maybe it's a computer game. Maybe this whole thing is a virtual reality of some kind. The Matrix gave us a window into how this might be possible. We could all be plugged into some machine somewhere. While it doesn't feel that we are, where it feels like we're here and it feels like things are real, but now we've been able to get a view into what we thought was solid is no longer solid. What we thought behaved like the macro world of the planets as orbits, as things with it mathematically repeatable. Hang on. Now we've got stuff that doesn't make sense in this world. How can it even be? When you start to pile up all the evidence, this is the greatest minds on the planet talking about this. And I'm sort of leaning a little that way myself. I think maybe this whole thing isn't real. And as Becky said, maybe only when you dream you get to go back to the real place. Maybe that sort of explains reincarnation. That, at the end of this computer game, when you evidently get killed, that they say you meet your maker. Maybe you just meet the guy, the operator at the parlor where you had your 20 cents on the machine waiting for the next turn. I hope that makes sense to you, because that's the way that they're starting to see it, because it doesn't make sense. The only thing that we've got in our context are computer games.
And just on that, Dave, and it's a great addition, by the way. Thank you to a very difficult subject. So, of course, most people will completely dismiss what we're saying here, but I need to urge you to at least give it some thought, because all of the things we've said here, you can find out for yourself. You can look it up. You can do your own research, and if you allow yourself to roam free, if you allow yourself to get rid of your preconceived ideas, which aren't yours, by the way, these ideas were given to you. Most ideas that you have, most thoughts that you have, are not yours. They're things that you've learned, they're things that you've heard, they're things you've picked up, they're things that were deliberately told you to be true. So just do that, and it is really this reality. It is really this reality that is the problem, right? Dave quite rightly says that everything can be measured by our context, and that's true. In fact, I dare you to tell me where the hypothesis, for example, has a gap. What part of the hypothesis is incorrect? Happy to correct any single bit. That's cool. The more we learn, and this is crazy. So we've done this now for 7 years almost. We've had this show for 7 years. Dave and I have been interested in this, not in this particular thing, but certainly me and myself, Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, alien life, and Dave himself, of course, in alien life and interference and so forth for the better part of several decades. And everything that we learn, and we do a lot of research for these shows, right? Everything we learn, every person we speak to, everybody who in my opinion, and Dave's opinion, is a person worthwhile talking to, because they have done research and they're interested in the nature of reality and what's going on, comes to very similar conclusions. Now, they don't. Not everybody goes necessarily down as far as we do. So some have gone further, but certainly there's this consensus as to what direction the research is leading, and it is leading into this particular direction. Reality seems to be, well, a made-up thing, an agreed-upon thing, if you will, a thing that has been, well, willingly or unwillingly, forced upon us. And Dave is right mentioning the Planck length. Why would there be a limit in our universe to something that should be ultimately immeasurable? It should be going ad infinitum. Like there should be no end to this. Right? It is really strange. You're right, Dave. There's more and more people accepting, right, the converging of our thoughts toward the same outcome, as you so finally put. There is that, and there's also an understanding that we are at a critical critical juncture. We're at a critical juncture in our existence, because in the past there have been civilizations. I think nobody would argue that anymore. We're finding them all the time now. I mean, Göbekli Tepe, right? Who? We don't know. We don't know. The age of humanity is being pushed out further and further, right? It's a fact. We're also all of a sudden finding out that we are co-inhabiting the world, even in recent times, with our cousins and very close relatives. The human tree is a lot more complex and coexistent than we thought. We thought, all these guys, were before us. No, they were coexistent with us, and the humanity itself was a lot more divergent, a lot more interesting. Fairly recently, I'm sure that a lot of these, races and species are still surviving today, hiding from us, because we are the killer ape. So all of these boundaries are being pushed. All of these boundaries. We understand that the Aboriginal people are going back tens of thousands of generations. Their talk of the dreaming eerily is reminiscent of what we're talking about here as well. There is a lot. There is a lot to this. Don't dismiss it out of hand. Don't dismiss it because it doesn't fit with you. Don't dismiss it because the experts tell you it's nonsense. I've had so many arguments with people that go, "Oh, it's clearly it's crazy." Clearly, how? Oh, Occam's razor. Whoa, easy there, Tiger. So first of all, Occam's razor says the simplest explanation is usually the right one. I'm just making it simple to understand. Okay, who decides what the simplest explanation is? Who decides the framework within which a simple explanation exists, and who then decides what the simplest explanation is? So all of the things that we take for granted were given to us by someone else, most likely. Do you get my meaning? Free your thoughts. Free your thoughts. Have your own thinking, and don't necessarily take what the experts tell you. If a physical scientist tells me that iron melts at 1,000 degrees, for argument's sake, I believe that, because that's the thing. That's what happens, right? But we're just scratching at the framework here. This is not reality. Yes, iron is in it, and science tells us it will melt at a certain point. That's wonderful. Why is there an atomic structure? What is the nature of the quantum world that enables iron to melt at 1,000 degrees? Those are the questions that we can't answer. Those are because we lack the tools and the skills and maybe the mind, at least in our bodies here in this reality, to understand it.
Hey Mackie, I've got something to add. So imagine if we're driving along, on a road, and the road is only the artist's impression of what we currently believe to be there, not what's actually there. Think about that. Are you with me, Mackie, on this one?
Yes. In fact, SJ, you're both on the right track. It's exactly right. It's belief. That's it though. It's what everybody believes. This is a consensus term around like it means nothing. It is absolutely a consensus reality we inhabit. Even if you and I, Dave, completely to the core of ourselves believe what we say here, to the core, it would not change unless everybody else did too.
Absolutely. There is the end of show 310. At 312, we'll have been on air for 6 years and starting the 7th year. I'd like you all to join us for the next 2 shows. Coming after this one is a roundtable with Jer Bear. Thank you very much for allowing us the time, and hope to see you next week. Take care.